So here we are. We are going to take a look at the review of the Revell Monogram A-6 Intruder. This is rectifying an issue that I came to realize while I was doing the part one of my time lapse for this build. I mean, this is currently the status of this build. I was doing part one of the time lapse and I realized I never actually did a full review on this. And I went back through all my footage, and I honestly could not find any data, any videos that I did of the review of this, which is slightly annoying. But anyways, it is what it is. So I'm going to rectify that now. It's going to be a bit of a different video because I've already started the construction of this. What I'm going to end up doing is we'll jump back and we'll look at the intro I did for the November 2024 What's on My Desk, which is where I actually introduced this kit for the first time. We'll start with that. It's not ideal. I don't go through all the sprues line by line, but we'll then take a detailed look at the instructions and the kit decals, and it'll be an 80-ish% version of what I normally do for these reviews. So on that note, let's jump back. We'll take a quick look at the old footage from when I first introduced this kit, and then we'll look at instructions, like I said. So on that note, as always, my name is Sean, and this is Sean's Aviation. I already put it on the shelf before I introduced it. This is the Monogram, or the Revell Monogram, however you want to call it, the A6E Intruder. So this is the other one I'm going to be building, and this is the kit I'm going to be robbing the other pilot from for the F-14. So this one will not have pilots in it. I'll have the cockpit open, wheels down, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I've built the EA6B in the past. I've built two of them before. One when I was a kid, which I have still. It was hanging up at my dad's house for years, and it's currently sitting in the closet waiting to be stripped and rebuilt. And then I have another one I did up in the Desert Storm scheme sitting on the shelf, which I'll get to eventually in my previously built models. But this one is the A6, and I've never actually built an A6 before, so this is exciting. I've always wanted to build an A6, and I figured if I'm doing the F-14, I might as well do an A6 as well and kind of do a joint one. And I have enough space on the shelf over here with my F-15 and my A10 to squeeze in both the A6 and my F-14 on the same shelf. So that solves that problem. I'm going to be using some aftermarket decals. I believe it's Fighter Town decals I'm using. I have it all in a reference book somewhere. I can't remember off the top of my head. But anyways, I'm going to be doing it up in a post-Vietnam scheme. It's got some green details on it. I plan to use, just load it up with the CBUs, the cluster bombs. So that's kind of the plan for that. Triple ejector racks, cluster bombs, fuel tanks, all that fun stuff. It's a Monogram kit, so it's got raised panel lines, but I mean, I'm gonna live with it. I think it's gonna look really cool, painted, weathered. Like I said, with the cockpit open, the boarding ramp open, all that fun stuff. So looking forward again to building that, and it's gonna look really, really cool with the rest of my collection. Because I'll have, yeah, you know, I'm starting to get a decent collection of like modern fighters and stuff. So okay, so now we've gone back and looked at that, let's take a quick look at what the instructions have in store. Now this is the modern version of it. I took a quick look at ScaleMates just to refresh my memory. This kit initially came out in 1988, and it had that kind of early Revell Monogram style pull-out instructions like this. This is the F-14 set I have. This is what the original A6 instructions would have looked like. These newer kits released by Revell have this more modern style booklet, which it's kind of nice. It makes it a little easier to follow. I find these style can be hard to keep track of, especially when you're working across, you know, and like step 12 is huge, and then 18, it can get a little, like, it's busy. There's a lot going on. It's hard to kind of follow at times, especially when you're trying to, like, you know, when you're like, I don't tend to follow instructions step by step, and I find that just gets a bit busy when you're trying to jump around a little bit. So I do prefer this booklet style. So you start off with your color callouts, not a whole lot, typical kind of Monogram Revell, early Monogram Revell stuff. It's just like names, like green, Okay, what green? Do you know how many different greens they have for model paints? So you got to do a bit of research and make sure you get the proper colors. But anyways, that's just a personal gripe. I do like that it has all of these callouts, the part callouts, every part number. So if you look at part 44, and part 44 is the right-hand seat side. So it makes it a little easier when you're working on things. So if you have a part on the kit and you're like, wait, what's this little antenna part? Oh, you know, it's part, well, you know, it's just a perfect example, you know. I'll grab one of these. Let's just say you're building the kit and at the very end of it, you have this left over. Oh, what's this? Part 120. Oh, part 120 is the pitot tube. Yeah, I should use that. You know, or what's this little part here? 122. Oh, that's the intake antenna. Oh, you know, so it actually explains where the parts go. So you can go back through the instructions and do your research to find out, oh, here we go. Here's where the, you know, it's probably one of these. Oh, you know what? I did miss one of those. So it allows you to do that extra step, which is kind of nice. I do like that. So starting off in the instructions, as usual, you start with the cockpit. I will zoom you in here just slightly. Make sure that kind of fits the screen. There we go. Make life a little easier for you guys. So it starts off with the instructions. There are a slight difference between the A and the E. This is a split kit. You can do either version. So it does give you the two different instrument panels depending on what version you make. It also has a decal for the instrument panel. I did not use that. I'll show you the decals at the end. Didn't end up doing that for mine. Seats, as I've mentioned in the time lapse, it's a weird build. The bottom half of the seats are molded into the cockpit tub. The top half of the seats glue onto it. But if you look at the seats, they look similar to like the F-14 seats and other model seats they have. So why they split it like that, I don't really know the mentality behind that. It's harder to fit the seats. The back halves are really kind of floppy and they don't have a lot of glue surface. It would have been significantly easier just to have a drop-in seat. So I really don't understand the mentality behind that decision, but it is what it is. You do get pilot figures. I did not use those in mine, as I will be having it built with the cockpit open. I think I actually used one of these pilots in the F-14 kit, to be honest. So step 2, you're gluing the fuselage halves together. It does make a note to add a small weight inside, but they don't give you any actual measurements. I used just a bunch of copper BB shot in there with some white glue to add some weight to the nose. I probably added a bit too much. Luckily it has a strong gear as a kit, so it's not going to snap the gears off, but you just kind of have to play with it. That's all I basically did, is I just kind of put everything together and then played with a bunch of weight until I got something close to what held the nose down, and then I just added a bit more and glued it all into the nose. I wish I'd measured it. I should have measured the weight out and then I could have a number for you, but just do your due diligence. Make sure you do that balance and get some weight in there. Or if all else fails, do what I did, just put way too much. The next step down here is this center fuselage piece, as well as your arrestor gear piece. This is also a weird, I know why, again, they did this. It's really hard to get down into the valley in between these intakes to clean the seams. So instead of putting a seam down the middle, they put the seam on the crest of the engines. I mean, I have the kit, I'll show you. So by putting the seam up here, which you can still see on this kit, by moving the seam up to here, it's easier to clean the seam up versus having it down inside this valley, which is extremely hard to get into. The only downside is the kit was not designed to be built with the landing gear up. Luckily that I'm building with the gear down. I build a lot of my kits with the gear down, but it's always nice when you have that option. Having to do a bunch of surgery to get the gear to fold up isn't always fun. I have another EA6B that I got to build wheels up, and that is going to be a pain to do. But anyways, I ended up not gluing this part in until much later in the sequence, and that was to allow me access to this nose. And that way, if I misguessed, if I did not appropriately guess the amount of weight I needed, then I could add more to the nose after the fact. But luckily everything worked out and I did not need to do that. So I glued it on later in the sequence. It also mentions to cut a hole here. That's for later if you use the little tail stand, if you don't add nose weight. It's kind of annoying that it tells you to open the hole and use a tail stand, but also to add weight to the nose. You can clearly see that like this was initially in the kit, and when they made it the second time when they re-released this, they're like, oh well, we'll just add weight and then it balances. but they never corrected that. So a lot of builders will cut this hole and then realize after the fact they don't need it because you followed that step. Step 3 are the intakes. Again, not the greatest of intakes. The seams are really hard to clean up. If you're looking to make first of all, if you're looking to make a relatively detailed kit, this is not the way to go. Raised panel lines make it extremely difficult to do proper work on this. Sanding is very difficult. All that kind of stuff. Seam cleanup is hard with raised panel lines. These intakes also are absolute junk. Like I said, the seam inside is really hard to clean up after the fact, especially because the fan face is molded into the back of it. It would have been a lot better if they provided like a through intake and you added the fan blade back here, the fan face back here. If you're looking to do a especially if you're looking to have, well, intakes open in a detailed kit, look at aftermarket. I haven't looked into it. I'm not too worried about it for this particular build. That is definitely a weak point of this kit. I mean, I still have quite a bit of seams I have to clean up on that just because of how bad this fit is. Also, the fit between this inner piece and the outer piece, there's no positive fit at all. So if you slide that off by just a fraction, they don't fit. So it's a real finicky design, and I don't like it. The next step is these speed brakes. You choose between the slotted or unslotted or hold or unhold. That all depends on what version you build. So you got to be careful when you come back here to look at your decal options. Both of these actually show closed. That is interesting. They both show the closed version. Anyways, you have the option to decide. It's weird because it doesn't say A or B, but here it says if you're doing scheme B, use 12 and 13, which means I guess you need the hold ones for A, but they don't actually explain that. So again, it's a little confusing. So for a newer modeler, it could be difficult to understand. So again, do your research. Here you build up the wings. Again, it tells you to cut holes farther out on the wings, but as far as I can tell, you don't use those holes. You only use the inner holes. There's already 2 sets of pylons here, so I don't know why they want you to cut the outer ones when you're not using the outer ones. There has nothing in the instructions to use a 3rd pylon. But yeah, anyways. Moving on to step 4, you start working on the gear. Here's another part where you got to be careful. This is the little FLIR turret for the E model. So you only put that on if you're doing scheme B, which again is not very clear because when you go here, the schemes aren't numbered A or B. So just having that with a B, if you're not sure what you're doing, you're going to be confused as to what you're supposed to do. But anyways, I also glue my gear on significantly later in the build just to make sure stuff doesn't get knocked off. Same with like a clear part. You don't want to be gluing a clear part on before you paint it. So it's just, but that's just experience. Down here's the main gear. And then here you're gluing those on with the struts. And then you got your gear doors and all of the supports that go into the gear doors. 6 is the other side gear doors, and then you start working in the cockpit. You've got the combing with the heads-up display as well as the rear bit. Again, you can do this with the canopy open. It does allow you to do it. It just doesn't show it in the instructions. So if that's the case, glue the canopy to this piece, and then you can install it farther back. I'm going to sneeze. Apologies. Next up is the canopy. Again, the masking. It does show you here how to do the masking and painting, which is nice. And the edges is very crisp on the canopy, so it is really, really easy to do that after the fact, or to mask it with masking tape and cut the edge, which is what I do versus pre-cut masks. So it's very easy to do that. Again, you've got also the mirrors that has to be glued in. Again, it shows, no, I guess it shows 4, but again, that's just a little confusing. But it shows here where they're supposed to be mounted, so that's nice. I'll have to get those added to mine still. Moving on over here on step 7, you've got some intakes, you've got your stair doors, your fold-out stairs. Again, the fit isn't the greatest, so you'd have to do a lot of work to mount them closed. Luckily, I'm doing mine open. You've also got a light here for the refueling. Again, just be careful. Don't glue that on too early because you don't want to have issues with paint. And you got your pitot tube and your rear intake. Here's that stand that I was talking about that it talks about back here. But again, it doesn't tell you why you're drilling the hole, although it does say in step 7. I guess it does explain it, but it doesn't tell you to not use that if you use nose weights, which can be annoying. And then you end up installing some of these blade antennas, some lights, and your center tank. And then you come to the options for weapons. And it does have it broken down here, A or B. But it doesn't kind of say over here the difference between them, which is A and which is B. It doesn't explain that, which, again, a little frustrating. So this shows you how to build up. You've got A and B, or A, C, D, B, and you go through and you build up your weapons. So the A is the cluster bombs, which you have here, right A and left A. And then B are your Mark 82 Snake Eyes, which it shows here is B. And then down here, you've also got drop tanks, which is C. And then D are the HARMs, the anti-radiation missiles. I'm actually modifying mine. I'm going to be doing the drop tanks on the inboards and the cluster bombs on the outboards, just because I kind of like that layout. I really wanted to use the cluster bombs. I ended up using the Snake Eyes on a different kit years ago, and I only have the clusters left, and I wanted to add cluster bombs. So they're going to go on the outboards, drop tanks on the inboards, and a center fuel tank. Weapons aren't bad. They need a lot of cleanup. This particular kit was released in the early 2000s, I should say. I think it was 2001 or 2002, 2012. So this is 30, I got to do math. 24-ish years after the molds were first cut. So there is quite a bit of flash on the kit. So quite a bit of cleanup needed on the weapons when you get in close to them. But they are nice. They give you quite a good selection, and you can do some really cool stuff, mix and match with other weapons and stuff to get a full layout. So the decals that are included, you get one A6E from VA-85 from the USS Forrestal in 78, and you get one from VA-35, so the Panthers from the USS Nimitz, although there isn't a date, but it would also be in the late 70s, most likely into the early 80s. Based off the layout. The paint ended up switching to that all over gray, late 80s, early 90s. So this is somewhere in that window. And then the back side is some of the stencil layouts, as well as your top and bottom. And then it gives you a little bit of a better call out here. You actually get FS numbers here for some of the colors back here. So here it says F, here you got at least olive drab, but just green. But E calls it flat tan. Here you actually get an FS call out. Oh, you can't see that. You actually get a federal standard call out down here. So that definitely helps a little bit when you're doing the painting to get the proper call outs. It is nice. It shows you the white rollover on the horizontal stabs and stuff like that. It's important to get that right, as well as although this is wrong. The tail is supposed to be white. The rudder, I should say, is supposed to be white all the way up. And you can see on this side, somebody missed that when they did the artwork. So just a little oopsie on that side, but it is what it is. Either way, you get some decent options out of the box. I'm going with some aftermarket on mine. For kit decals, oh, where did I put? There we go. So kit decals you get are these, and they are decent. I mean, again, they're only from 2012. 2011 is the copyright on the decals. So they're not that old. It's not like this is an 80s or 70s set of decals, which would be weathered and yellowed and stuff like that. You can see here the instrument panels. I don't know if you can actually see that. I will zoom in a little bit more. Oh, too far. Okay, there we go. I'll get that out of the way. So instrument decals are up here. They're just white. So if you paint the instrument panel black and then glue those on, you get a little bit of detail, but I just ended up doing mine with dry brushing. Decals themselves are quite nice. Very minimal flash on a lot of them. Not flash, carrier film. Only where it's needed for, things like this A isn't a big square. It's kept in quite tight, which is nice. All your warning decals and stuff like that, all the letters and words are legible. So that's always nice too. A lot of times with these smaller decals, the writing ends up just being a blur. These ones you can make out where it says things like, you know, warning and stand clear, arrestor hook, and all that kind of stuff. So it definitely makes it nice. And you get a decent amount of stencils. All your, like I said, your warning markings. 20. Oh yeah, these go at the rear. The danger goes in the exhaust. So you get your ejection seat and your canopy release and all that kind of stuff. You actually get some bonding points and static points and whatnot. So it's a decent setup on the decal sheet for what it is. I mean, again, when you get these, you know, back in the day, you're paying 20, 25 bucks for this. It's a decent kit. Anyways, that's the decal sheet you get out of the box. Gives you quite a few options. Again, it also clearly states in the instructions here for things like this, the number on the flaps. You use decal 32, which is over here for if you're doing the VA85, and you use decal 12 up here if you're doing VA35. So they do give you those breakdowns if you're depending on the kit you do. So that's always nice. And then over here, it doesn't matter because they're split. So decent set of instructions, decent set of decals. That will wrap up the review of this A6C. Like I said, unfortunately, it's a slightly different format from my other ones just because I completely forgot to record this earlier in the process. So apologies on that. But yeah, if you haven't seen it yet, actually, this is a weird one because the part 1 of my time-lapse build for this model actually released a couple of weeks back. As I said, when I realized I missed this. So go back and take a look at that. Part 2 will be coming soon, and all the other stuff will be coming out as time goes on. So I will wrap it up here. So thank you all for watching. We'll see you all next time.